I've been drawing with coloured pencil for 4 years now. In that time, I have built up a successful commission-based business and now teach coloured pencil to artists all over the world. In this video, I want to share some tips that will help you develop your skills and take you to the next level. This is where I started, my first portrait done in 2016, and this is where I'd like to start, showing you what you can do to improve your drawing skills and your techniques. I discovered coloured pencil at Christmas 2015 and became really quite obsessed with my colouring books. I just love them. Great for mindfulness, for sort of disappearing into your own thoughts. Just a fabulous hobby, really. And then I started to draw my own pieces, and horses have always been a subject close to my heart. This is the first drawing that I did in, I think it was probably around March or April 2016, and as you can see, it looks like a horse. The shapes are all there, you know, we've got the rounded cheek, we've got the long nose, we've got nostril, we've got eyes. You know, it's not a bad drawing of a horse. When I posted it on Facebook, I got a lot of compliments. I even got people asking for commissions off this piece. And I was really proud of it. Really proud of it. You know, I'd not been drawing. I think the last time I'd picked up a pencil to draw was 1987. So that will have been, it will have been nigh on 30 years, 29, 30 years since I'd actually done any drawing. So I was really pleased with this piece. Now, one of the comments that I got from this piece from somebody was, you know, what about your next piece maybe incorporating some of the bone structure, so veins, bones, that type of thing. And I can remember actually not taking offence, but thinking, no, I don't want to draw all of those things. I'm quite happy drawing this, you know, how I've drawn it. But then actually my next piece was completely different again. I think subconsciously I'd taken that person's comments in, and I thought, do you know what, actually horses do have bone structure. And I'm just going to show you a picture of an actual horse. So this is an Arab. This is a picture from Pixabay, so it's copyright free. But if we just look at, and if I just bring the two together so we can kind of see both of them on the screen together, let's put that there. Put that there so we can see these heads together. Now you can see that I've got the basic structure, so I've got that lovely rounded cheek there, I've got the flowy mane, you know, I've got everything's there. I've got the broad forehead, I've got a nice eye, I've got a catchlight in the eye, I've got the nostril in the right place, the mouth in the right place. You know, everything is pretty horse-like. But there are many fundamental things that are not wrong with the piece, but that are missing from the piece. Actually, there are quite a lot of things wrong with it. And the things that are wrong with it and the things that are missing from it are the things that would make this drawing, even if you just kind of added an inkling of some of those things in, would make this drawing 100% more realistic than what it is now. And what I've found over the 4 years that I've been drawing, the huge thing that I've kind of realised that I do subconsciously is the more I do, the more I see. And I think that's pretty similar for the majority of other artists. The more you draw, the more you develop your skills. I mean, that's a given. Practice doesn't make perfect, because if you practice the wrong things, all you'll do is get better at doing the wrong things. You know, so making sure that you are improving what you're doing, and we can talk about that a little bit later, but it's about what you're seeing and how you're seeing, and then how you are putting what you're seeing down onto the paper. So this first portrait that I did back in 2016 looks like a horse. It is a horse, but it's missing a huge amount of information in there that makes it look real. The information would be the bone structure. So we've got the eye socket here. So we've got this big bone here. We've got highlight. We've got this dip. Every horse has got one of these. Every horse has got an eye socket. All of that is missing from my piece, which makes it very flat, which makes it it doesn't stand out from the page. It doesn't look realistic because it's missing all of those lights and shadows and the structure of the form underneath the horse's skin. The eye, it's not bad. Horses' eyes don't really look like that. The other thing that I've learned is draw what you see, not what you think you see. And the problem with us as human beings is that our brains, at every single opportunity, will try to take over. And our brain will go, oh, it's a horse. Yep, so a horse's eye looks like this, blah, blah, blah. It's got a little highlight in there. It's got a bit of an eyelid underneath there. And, oh, yeah, it's got this funny sort of thing that comes down to a point, sort of like, like a teardrop. Yep, horse's eye. Well, horses' eyes don't look like that. Horses' eyes have got an awful lot more around them to start with. A huge amount more around them, to start with. So they've got a lot more creases in there. They've got more depth. So you can see this big crease here where the top of the eyebrow, at the top of the eyelid is here. We've got some really lovely detail here in the eyebrow area. I haven't even got an eyebrow on this one. I mean, warranted, it was my first piece, and that's absolutely fine. But these are the things that we need to be really, really looking at if you want to develop your art and your coloured pencil drawings. I'm missing this bone down here. This is the projecting cheekbone, if you know about horses. Missing this completely. So again, that's really stopping it from looking realistic because I haven't got any of that bone structure in there. We've got these little veiny areas, veiny bits. Some horses have more, some have less. The hotter a horse gets, the more the veins tend to stick out, and then we've got sort of like the jawline. Now I've got a little bit of the jawline here. We can see a bit of the jawline in here, and we can see a little bit of where the cheek bone kind of comes into here as well, which is fine. Mouth is okay, I guess. Muzzle is very square, bit nondescript. Nostril probably too small, kind of in the right place, but there's no definition. We've got all this sort of lovely skin and everything coming around here. The muzzle is going to have a lot more. If we blow this up a little bit, we can see it's maybe a little bit blurred, but you can see all of these little dimples and everything in the muzzle. Usually have sort of like some grooves and everything in between the nostrils. And one thing again that's quite interesting. That is quite interesting, and let's just blow my picture up here. I don't think you can see there really. Let's put it down here. The eye. I've got my eye on a bit of a strange angle. I've put this weird thing in here. This isn't what the horse's eye looks like at all, really. And I haven't really identified the pupil or anything like that. And a horse's pupil is oblong. It's like a sheep's pupil. It's always horizontal to the ground. So wherever a horse's head is, the pupil is always horizontal to the ground. So that's another really, really important thing to think about. So I'll just take this down again. Take that down. Oops. So lots to think about in this piece that I'm missing. We've got no bone structure and we've got no definition down the front of the face. Yes, she's got a big white blaze, but there would still be some definition in there. Now, one of the biggest things that is missing from this piece, well, not missing from this piece, but that is fundamentally wrong in this piece, is the direction of the hair. It seems to me like I have just shaded all the way across, just shaded down across, and I haven't thought about the direction or the length of the hair at all. If you look at this horse here, you can see that the hair actually follows the structure underneath the hair and the skin. So the hair here, it comes over and round, it comes, and then it's sort of layered a little bit here, then it dips and it comes up and then it comes round again. When you hit these bits that are a little bit higher up on the head, so the eye socket here, we've got this big highlight on it. The hair goes round the eye socket, comes down, and then it gets shorter around the eye. So we've got much, much shorter hair around the eye. The hair comes in this direction, and then it starts to change direction, and then it changes direction again. On the front of the head, we've got hair going up here. We've got hair kind of going up to meet it. We've got most horses have some sort of a whirl or 2 whirls or 3 whirls or a long line of whirls, but you get a change in direction there. So we've got sort of like a little Rossetti type thing here. The hair then starts to come down the nose, it changes direction again and comes downwards. And then as it comes over this nose bone here, changes again and starts to come down. And you can see it curving round. It curves round the veins. It curves round the bones. And then when you get down to the muzzle area, again, the hair gets very, very short, very velvety, very soft. And you can see all the way along here where the hair direction falls. On my piece, the hair direction is all in one direction. It's all just going in one direction. So it doesn't follow any sort of structure underneath the horse. That is one of the fundamental things of making your portraits, your animal portraits, look realistic, is really looking at your subject, really understanding how your subject is formed underneath the hair, because let's face it, we're kind of drawing the outside bits, we're drawing the hair. But what's going on underneath the hair? You know, how does the skull work? How does the eye socket work? How are the ears fixed onto the top of the head? They're fixed up onto the top of the head here, but the ears can swivel. They can swivel all the way round. You know, and if you know horses, you'll know that, you know, ears can go right back, they can go right forward, they can flop to the sides, one ear can go back, one ear can go forwards. You know, there's all sorts of different directions that these animals' ears can go in. So it's really, really important to understand how they kind of sit on the head, how they fit on the head. You can see my ears here, I've just kind of stuck this sort of leaf-shaped black thing on the top, you know, next to the poll here, and it looks like an ear, and this, you know, it's not bad, it's sort of funnel shaped and everything, but you know, I've not gone into sort of like putting any hair in there or you know, really looked at the shaping or, you know, anything like that. So it's really, really important to get a clear understanding of how the animal is formed, and looking at the hair direction will really, really help you understand what the structure underneath the skin and the hair looks like. Now, the second thing, and probably maybe on a par, maybe even more important than getting your hair at the direction and everything correct, are your tonal values. And if you listen to any artist who teaches, they will always be banging on about get your darks dark, get your lights light, get your darks dark, lights light. You know, it's all about getting your darks dark and your lights light. My piece is very flat. It's very flat because there isn't really any form there. There's no 3D-ness. There's no nothing really. What you want to be trying to do is to incorporate your tonal values. So where you've got really dark darks, get them in really, really dark. Where you've got light lights, get them in, you know, I'm not saying get them in really light, but, you know, light enough so that there's a contrast between your darks and your lights. And then your mid-tones, the bits that aren't really dark and aren't really light, will come in and they'll kind of just sit in between. The huge, and I don't know why we have a problem with it, and I have a major issue doing it even now, is getting my darks dark enough. You know, if something's really, really dark, we seem to have an issue. And when we look at it, and I think it's probably our brain getting in the way again, and it's very similar with white as well. But I think when we look at black, we don't want to put black in because we think that it's just going to obliterate everything and we're not going to be able to see anything. But you look at this horse here and you look at the nostril area here, that is dark. That is really, really dark. That's black. You know, if you made this nostril area in here And probably what you would end up doing is making it 50% of the strength of this darkness here. What's going to happen is the whole of the rest of your piece is going to be faded back, because you're going to then be trying to kind of match your midtones to your darkest dark. And if your darkest dark is 50% of the actual strength, then so are your midtones going to be 50%, and so are your highlights going to be 50%. So you are going to end up with, like I've got here, a washed out piece, very flat, no tonal qualities, just not cutting it really. So that's something that you've really, really got to think about. Now, there are some fantastic tonal qualities in this horse. We've got really dark areas in the ear and in here. We've got fabulous darkness in the eye, as well as some amazing lightness in there. We've got really, really dark darks around here. If you miss out this dark bit here, what's going to happen is it's going to affect the whole of the area around the eye, even the middle of your eye. You're going to be going, oh, that, it's just not going to look right. You've got some amazing dark areas in here, which you can then counteract by adding in, the highlights coming into the forelock and everything like that. So to be able to get beautiful highlights, you need to have really, really fantastic shadows. And those are my two major points for developing your coloured pencil drawings. You get your hair direction going in the right place. You get your contrast and your tonal values correct. You get those two things. Doesn't matter about detail. Doesn't matter about colour. I mean, this horse here could be bright purple and orange, and it would not matter a hoot if you had your hair direction going in the right place and you had all of your tonal qualities correct. Now, that sounds like a very easy thing to do. And it's not. It isn't easy. Of course it's not easy. It takes practice. It takes hours and hours of drawing. I mean, if I think about the amount of drawing that I've done over the last 4 years, some days I'm drawing for up to 12 hours. Some days, warranted, I haven't been drawing at all. But if we said, that I was probably drawing on average maybe about 5 hours a day, something like that, it's going to give you a lot of... My maths is rubbish, by the way, which is why I'm not giving you the full figure. But it's going to give you a lot of drawing hours. Now, if I was drawing and just practicing this, I don't think I would have got to the stage that I am now. So if we look at the latest piece that I've just drawn, so these are sort of just over 4 years apart. And what you can see is that I've done exactly what I've just been talking about. I've looked at my hair direction and I've looked at my tonal values. So my darks are really dark. And I've got some really nice highlights in here as well. Now, this was taken from a lovely photograph, absolutely. But you've still got to represent that photograph. You've still got to kind of take what you see on a photograph and put it down on a piece of paper. And it's not easy. It isn't easy. Some people think, oh, well, if you trace an outline, then, hey, presto, you've got the most amazing drawing. Well, you haven't. I mean, I freehanded this one. All of my pieces, probably up until middle 2017, are all freehanded. And I still freehand now if I have the chance. I'd love to freehand stuff. I tend to kind of just draw a very quick outline. And actually, tracing an outline, if you struggle getting your perspective and your elements in the right place, so, your eyes in the right place, nose in the right place, that type of thing, ears correct. If you really struggle getting that when you're freehanding, a really fantastic way of improving your freehanding, believe it or not, is to trace. To trace an outline, because what happens is you get muscle memory. You start to remember, you start to understand how a horse should look, where its eyes should be, how the shape of the nose should be, how the cheekbone kind of attaches to the neck. You get to understand all of this so that when you come to freehand, it becomes an awful lot easier because you have that muscle memory. Now, I'm not saying, you should never freehand and you should always trace your stuff. I'm not saying that. What I do say is you should do whatever you want to do to feel comfortable. A lot of people use a grid to create their drawings. I tried to grid. I'll show you one of my gridded pieces actually. So I tried to grid, and this was kind of what, I mean, it's not bad at all. But I kind of did this weird sort of, I don't know, diagonal thing. I don't know why I did that. And I just got completely and utterly confused. I think I did 2 pieces where I tried to use a grid. This was back in 2016 as well. And you can see there's probably about a month's difference between this drawing here and this drawing here. This one's still quite crude, but the nose is pretty good. I'm really happy with that nose. And this nose, I can recall I'd done it. My daughter walked in the room and went, that nose is too small. So I got a bit cross. Had to rub it all out and start again because I'd got my nose too narrow. So it was, I wasn't drawing what I was seeing. I was drawing what I was thinking I was seeing. And I kind of then started to measure. And that's another really, really good way of being able to kind of keep check of your drawings. If you are going to be freehanding, keep check of your drawings by measuring, So this nose, basically on the photograph, the nose was exactly or nearly the same distance or the same width as the distance between the eyes. Okay, you probably wouldn't believe it, but that's, if I bring like a guide in. So we've got there. And we've got there. So it's pretty much that distance. Whereas when I drew it, it was probably, quite a bit smaller actually. So that's another really, really good thing that you could try is, you can use your gridding if gridding works. I can't explain the gridding method because I don't get it and I can't use it and it just confuses me completely. So I tend to just draw freehand what I see, and I'll measure. And there are all sorts of things you can use to measure. You can use your pencil. You can just kind of lay your pencil across, put your finger on the end of it, move it up to here, kind of sort of like put your pencil down in a line and go, oh, well, that lines up to there, that's fine. There's all sorts of things you can do, just to make sure that things are correct. With dogs, it's relatively easy when sort of like working out where eyes and noses and everything go, because the angle from the eyes, the top of the nose, the top of the nostrils, bottom of the nose, and the mouth, the angles are all the same. Even if you've got a dog on a 3/4 angle, the angles are always the same. If your nose is out, it means your dog is sniffing slightly, which is fine on the photograph, but when you kind of put it into your drawing, you might want to just kind of twist the nose back round again. But I mean, I digress. You can see the difference between these two, and there's probably maybe about a month between these, maybe 6 weeks between these two drawings. So it's not bad. So what I'd done is I'd taken on board what this person had said about adding bone structure, about adding veins, all of that type of stuff. And I really started to look at my subjects. And you can see here how I've really, really started to look at it, how I've started to think, right, okay, so how is this hair working? How's it, how does it grow over the top of the skull? How do I make it look like the hair is going up and round? And even in this early stage, I've still got these little nuances in the top of the head here. We can see little dips coming in here. I mean, this is still a work in progress back then. But it's quite a good example of how you can get all of those hairs and everything in there. This was just done on black Strathmore paper, and actually it worked really, really nicely. The eyes are pretty good. I've brought in some eyelids in here now. We've got some really nice darks in there. So that one tiny bit of advice I got from this piece, get your bone structure in, it had quite an impact on how I then started to draw. Now, there are things that are wrong with this. You can see that this cheekbone here is slightly different to this cheekbone. This cheekbone needs to be a little bit sort of out a little bit more. The hair and everything on the dog's head's not that brilliant. But it's not bad. It's not bad at all. But then we kind of compare with what I'm doing today, and I just finished this piece yesterday. I'm really, really happy with this piece, And I think because I've really looked at and managed to kind of capture the softness of the animal, as well as all of the, the elements, the nose, the eyes, all of that type of thing. But I brought in the tonal values. And for me, tone is king. You know, it really, really is. Brings the piece to life. It makes it look realistic. You don't need a huge amount of detail in there. I mean, I know it's pretty detailed, but, you know, there's hardly any detail around here and on the cheek here. I think there's one layer of pencil in here, and there's maybe 2 layers in here. But they're pencil marks in the right place. And that's what you've got to, I'm probably waffling on here and you're thinking, get to the point, Bonnie, but this is what you've got to try and do, is really work out how your marks are going to work on the paper, and what the length of the marks are going to be. So if I just blow this up slightly, I mean, this is a photograph, so it's a little bit tricky to see, but you know, it's not how many hours have I spent on this? I don't know, probably about 30 hours. You can see some of the grain from the paper coming through. Does that matter? Not a jot. What matters is that I've got life in the eye. I've got the contrast correct, and it looks like the subject, you know, which it does. You know, so it's really about getting your marks in the right places, which sounds really, really easy, but, you know, again, it's about what you're looking at, what you're seeing. So when we look at the photograph, how are we seeing this? How are the hairs growing on the horse's face? You know, if I blow this up a little bit, these are all, the texture of the hair changes. So we go from quite open weave hair here, where we can see quite a lot of hair texture in here, down to very, very, very close weave down here. Very velvety, I would imagine, feeling hair down here. You know, very close, very, very, very short hair around the eye here. You know, and then we go into the cheek here, and then it becomes longer, the hair becomes longer, it becomes coarser, you know. So using your pencils to replicate how the hair grows on an animal is a really, really good idea. You know, this piece, the cheek here, using longer strokes to get those longer hairlines. When we do the eye around here, you'd probably use little circly strokes around like this to kind of get that sort of almost stubbly texture, you know, to get that lovely sort of, it'll be velvety, but the hair's very, very, very short. And then down on the nose, again, you want that sort of roundy strokes, but you want the hair to look like it feels really soft. Then when you come to something like doing the mane and the forelock, you're going to have longer strokes. Some horses have very fine manes, some horses have much coarser ones. The knack when you're drawing a mane, so if we bring this one down here, I've kind of just done a few sort of stripes and that's it. It's probably took me an hour to do this. Oh, I've got a bit of colour in there, look. You know, now if I was to do this mane, I'd be looking at creating all of these lovely shadows. I'd be wanting to create that feeling of layering. Again, drawing what I'm seeing, not what I think I'm seeing. So I'm seeing hairs overlapping each other. This hair here comes up and underneath. This hair comes over the top. I've got little stray hairs coming through. You know, it's about getting the layering in there and getting it to look like it's 3D and it's growing out of the animal. Now this is actually a tutorial I created for black wavy fur. This is a coloured pencil drawing and it's on pastel mat, and it's a picture of, let's put it in there. It's a picture of my dog Slipper's fur. She's got black wavy fur. And I'm really pleased with this. I think it works really, really well. But it didn't start off like this. And this is another area of developing your work. The process. You know, how do you get something to look realistic? How do you get curly fur to look realistic? Because if you sat down and you tried to draw all of these little bits and you tried to draw the detail straight away, you would be struggling. I would be struggling. I mean, it would be just like, oh my goodness, where do I start? And I guess, where do you start? So for me, big learning curve for me was to really start thinking about how the fur kind of grew on the animal, and thinking about your darks, the shapes of the curls of the hair, you know, how that's kind of structured, and that's how I sort of brought it in from the beginning. So the first strokes on the paper, as you can see in this picture here, are very, very broad strokes. They're just sort of quite messy, quite sketchy, just looking at the photograph, pulling in where the darkest areas are, maybe bringing in a few sort of like little areas of curl. You can see as the curl sort of sits here, you can see how it then is transferred. You can kind of see how it ends up looking here, you know, and you've got sort of this curl here is this one here, and it's about building it up from the inside out, because if you build it up from the inside out, then you can get the layers in there, and then it will look like real hair, because real hair is layered. You know, you have bits that sit on the top, you have bits that sit in the middle, and you have these dark, deep parts that are the closest to the animal's skin. So we go on to the next bit, and what I've done there is I've kind of added in some white. I think it was probably just a Pablo. I've just added in a little bit of white into the highlights just to get an idea of what the hair is doing, where the lightest lights are going. So you can see in here there's a semblance of what these highlights are going to look like here. You can see a little bit of some of these highlighted bits in here, and how these furs coming down here. I mean, there's well, you can see a little bit here as well of this nice little curl that's coming in there. But there are areas of this piece where honestly it doesn't look anything like what the piece ended up looking like. You know, it's really very rough and ready, and this is what you would call the ugly stage of a drawing, and you have to kind of work through it. And it's very hard sometimes to be kind of sitting there thinking, am I doing the right thing here? I'm not sure. And I remember doing this as this was a workshop, this particular piece, and it took me about 4 hours, I think, but it worked so well. But the looks on my students' faces when we were doing this, and they were like, yeah, this just not working, Bonnie. It's really not working. But you've got to get through that initial ugly stage to kind of get to, you know, the end. And you have to remember as well that, you know, Rome wasn't built in a day. You can't create something realistic with just a couple of layers. It's just not going to happen. If you want something painterly, then maybe, but not if you want that realism. So we move into the next bit here. Again, we've kind of worked into those darks a little bit more. We kind of brought in some of the lights, starting to build the feel of it a little bit. Moving up into this one, we've kind of added in an extra colour, so we've got some dark indigo, I think, in there, really starting to build the darks up. We've kind of brought in a little bit of those mid-tones in there as well, and we've still got those highlights in there, still bringing those highlights in, but it's still looking a little bit blah. We come into here again, build it up again, build more highlights in. You can see how these highlights are starting to come in now. Into this the sixth picture here, again we're starting to make those darks really dark now. You know, you're starting to get a feel that there's areas that are going back, there are areas that are coming forward. The turning point for me when I'm working on a piece like this is those little stray hairs, and I call this scribbling. You know, if you're going to be doing curly fur like this, what you have to do is you have to get a sharp white pencil, and I use the Museum Aquarelle white, and you basically scribble over the top of your drawing. And what it does is it automatically makes your brain believe that they are stray hairs. So we go from this piece here to this piece here, and straight away it's looking more realistic, even though it hasn't really changed very much. The only thing that's changed is we've brought in these little stray hairs, and it's made it look more realistic to our brain. This is looking more like dog hair than this, because we've got these little stray hairs going over the top. And then we develop those little stray hairs, we develop some of the little highlights, we go even darker into the darks, and then we come to this end piece, basically here, where we've brought even more of those little stray hairs in, we've lightened the lights, we've really darkened the darks, we've got some sort of really nice texture and everything in there, and we end up with a piece of art that looks like dog's hair. And it's a process, and I feel that, you know, anybody can learn a process. Anybody can kind of understand that, right, I put my darks in first, then I put a few lights in, then I kind of build the darks up, I then enhance the lights, I build the darks even more, I enhance the lights, again build the darks, enhance the lights, then I add a few little stray hairs in there, and within 4 hours you've got this fabulous drawing that looks like dog hair, you know. And I can promise you, every single person in that workshop came out with a piece of art that looked like this, and they were all astounded. They were like, we started off like this, and we were like, no way is that going to end up looking like that. It's just not going to be possible. But it does, because you're building the layers up, and it's all about tones. It's all about those dark darks, those light lights, and then those little incidental details on the top. Colour, immaterial, doesn't matter about the colour. It's all about the tonal values, and then those little finishing touches. So this was a really, really good tutorial, actually, to kind of teach that the fundamentals of working through a process, of being able to recognise your shadows and then being able to kind of work up those areas. Also, and I've talked about this I don't know how many times, having the belief that it's going to work. If you've got the belief that this is actually going to work, you are far, far more likely to succeed, and you're far, far more likely to carry on going and persevere. If you get to this point here, and you go, oh God, this isn't working, this doesn't look anything like the picture, and you're right, it doesn't, you know, you're very likely to scrap it and try again, and get to the same result, scrap it, try again, same result, scrap it, try it again. And you know, you're kind of blocking yourself. You're hitting that ceiling of not being able to push through, and not having the belief that actually, no, it's going to work. I know it's going to work because I'm just going to work on it. I'm going to carry on doing my layering, because of course coloured pencil is all about the layering, and that's what we're going to be talking about next. So here are two examples of layering done 3 years apart. 2 years apart, 3 years apart. So this little squirrel was done in 2016. Again, one of my very, very first drawings. This shiny horsehair was done last year as another focus tutorial. The little squirrel is done just on normal, I think it's Dale Rowney cartridge paper. And the shiny horsehair was done on pastel mat. Now you can see that, and you can see in the video as well, actually, that I'm kind of showing alongside this how I've built up the layers in here, and how I've kind of really learned to build up using all sorts of different colours, building up all of those layers to create the illusion of fur and shine and depth. Now that's kind of missing on the squirrel. I mean, I know it was done on a probably a paper that wasn't that smooth, but actually not dissimilar. You can see the difference, or the similarity, I guess, in the tooth of the paper. So it's not dissimilar at all. And what I've done here is I have been layering, but not nearly as much as I need to be doing. And I think this is one of the things that, when you are a beginner artist, is very difficult to comprehend the layering process of coloured pencil. You know, how does layering work? How do I make, you know, why do I have to layer? How do I layer? How do I make something look realistic by using layers of pencil? Do I use just one colour? Do I just use, you know, I don't know, a burnt ochre, put a layer of burnt ochre on, then another layer of burnt ochre, and then another layer of burnt ochre? You know, what's the point of layering, and, you know, why should I do it? Well, the point of layering with a coloured pencil basically is to build the depth of whatever it is that you're drawing. Now, the majority of the time you will find it quite challenging to find a pencil that's the exact same colour that you're looking for. Plus, if you're drawing animals, an animal's coat, an animal's fur is never just one colour. You can see in this horsehair that I've got here, there's a whole range of colours in here. These are just 4 of the pencils that I used in it. I've also used some ivory in there, some paler oranges in there, some creams in there, and probably a little bit of white in there as well as using an eraser to kind of add to the layering too. Now, it's not just about putting one colour down and that be it. What I tend to do with my coloured pencils is I start with the lightest colour that I can possibly see. So with a piece like this, I'll pick out my lightest colour, which is probably going to be a cream or a very pale orange or something like that. And I will start to put in that colour very, very gently with very soft pressure. And that will be my first layer. I'll then build up with the next colour that I can see. In a piece like this, because the tones are very different, you've got some darker colours, you've got some lighter colours. You know, you might start off in this corner up here with sort of like a terracotta, burnt ochre. You might do a few strokes with one colour on one layer. You might then pick up another pencil and bring in some strokes on the same layer but with a different colour. So it's not all about just covering your paper with one layer of colour. You'll use all sorts of colours to go in there, you know, to build the depth and to build the richness of the colour. And that's kind of what's missing with the little squirrel here. I mean, let's just disregard the fact that I haven't kind of blended it or smoothed it or anything like that. It's not the point for this conversation. This is more about the layering. So what I've tried to do is I've tried to find a colour that kind of matches, and I've just gone with that colour. So I've just gone with a brown. I mean, I have got some other colours in here. I can see some sort of like Venetian reddy colours in there as well, which are kind of working quite well. But if I'd have used the layering process that I now use, and I now know that works incredibly well with coloured pencil, I would have got a much more realistic look to my little squirrel. I'd have also got rid of all of this tooth in there as well. On a smoother paper like this cartridge paper that I've used, it's really important to use very sharp pencils so that you can really get into that tooth and fill all of those little nooks and crannies with the pigment of your pencil. It's also a really good idea to burnish as well if you're using smooth paper. So using a heavier pressure with a lighter coloured pencil over the top will kind of smooth all of the pigment into the tooth, kind of squish all of the colours together, and then you can build up the colour on the top. If you're working with something like pastel matte, burnishing isn't necessary. You've just got to sort of lightly build your colours up, and then you can very gently pull the pigment together with a lighter coloured pencil. So with pastel matte, the pigment tends to sit on the top of the surface, and you can then kind of move the pigment around, if you like, very, very easily, rather than sort of the pigment sitting on top of the paper on a smoother paper, but you've got to kind of burnish it to get it into that tooth. So there's kind of a different technique going on there, but the layering process is so important, and that's I think where a lot of beginners kind of really struggle, is understanding how do I layer. And it all it is about putting one coloured pencil over the top of another coloured pencil, understanding how your colours work, so using colours that are going to work together. So if you were looking at drawing this horsehair here, and you decided you wanted to introduce a dark blue, for some reason you decided that you were going to introduce a dark blue to get some of the shadows, you know, you have to have the understanding that a dark blue on top of a yellowy orange is absolutely definitely going to guarantee you some sort of a sludgy green. Now, you know, that could be a learning point for you, you know, and you'll never do it again. Or you could start to understand your colours and start to understand how colours kind of work together, and the complementary colours. Actually, yellow and blue work very well together, but if you introduced a purple or a violet into your oranges, you're going to get a great shadow. You're not going to get a sludgy green. You're going to get a shadow that looks like a shadow. So as well as all of your layering and kind of bringing all of your colours together on the page to make it look 3D, you've also got to think about your colours and how your colours work together. You can look at something like a colour wheel to find your complementary colours. That's a really, really good way of kind of, understanding how colours work together and how you can bring in different colours to enhance what you're doing. And I think it's a good idea to kind of, look at something like a colour wheel and understand how it works. But the layering, fundamentally, in here, I haven't used layering. I've just kind of done maybe a couple, maybe tried to darken it a little bit. And this ended up being the finished piece, I think. This is very, very beginning stages for me now. I would then be working on this, putting more and more layers in here, bringing in some paler colours on the top to really start to burnish and soften all of that hair. And again, bringing in some darker colours as well. So your layering is a very, very important part of coloured pencil work. It's not just about one flat colour and then the same colour over and over again. It's about really looking at your reference photo, really looking at the colours that are within an animal's fur, because there's a myriad of colours in there, and introducing those. You might decide to, start with a darker colour and work lighter if you're working on something like a pastel mat. If you're working on a smooth paper, you're going to find it quite difficult to work light colours over the top of dark. So with coloured pencil, it's always better to work light to dark. Now, I'm not saying don't use any darks, because it's very important to get your tonal values in quite quickly. So your darks, it's quite important to get those in. But when you're layering colours, so working up your colours light to dark is kind of a really good way of being able to capture all of the depth in the fur. So this is quite an interesting comparison. When you draw, every single drawing that you do, you will improve on what you've done before. Now, as I said before, practice doesn't make perfect. You have to make sure that what you are practicing is developing you in the right way. So creating a plan, working out what you need to be doing, making sure that you're moving in the right direction for the result that you want. Now, this drawing on the left was done in 2018 and was by far the best drawing I'd ever done. I was so proud of it. It was a big triple dog portrait, I loved it. I was so pleased with it, and I kind of felt this was the almost like the pinnacle of my development, really. 2 years on, very similar dog, a bit of a mirror image going on there, but the progress is actually huge. I've got a series of spaniel. What I've done is I've managed to bring in a load more detail to make it actually look like hair rather than sort of shapes. And I've also really developed how I use colour. So the spaniel on this side, lovely colour but very blue. This side is definitely a black spaniel, but I brought in all sorts of different colours and everything in there as well. Now, we talk about creating shapes and everything like that when we're drawing fur, and what's really, really important to remember when you're beginning is that you are never going to get to here, and I'm not saying this is the best spaniel drawing ever drawn, because it's not. I mean, there are some phenomenal artists out there. For me, this was kind of a really good piece of drawing. It was I was very proud of it, and I think it is a good drawing. But what we have to remember is that you have to go through those stages, even if it's really quick, even if you go through those stages in a matter of months. You still have to go through the stages of drawing, being proud, developing, wanting to move to the next level, and so on. If you don't go through those stages of drawing something and being pleased with it, but then going, what's the next? What can I do to improve it? You're never going to get to the stage where it's like, yeah, actually, I think I've got to a point now where I'm really, really pleased with, what I'm doing. And the way to develop for me has always been to be really proud of what I do. Whether it's a piece that I've really struggled with, or it's been a terrible reference photo or something like that, if somebody gives me lovely feedback, I'm always going to say thank you. It's very difficult, we as humans, the majority of us artists, if somebody says, oh wow, that's amazing, the first thing that we'll probably try and say is, oh well, it's okay, but there's bits of it, oh, I'm not very happy with this and I'm not very happy with that. And you've got to try to change your habits and become much more positive about your work, because that's what's going to spur you on, and that is what's going to give you the courage and the confidence to keep developing your work. If you keep berating yourself and you keep on saying, oh, well, it's rubbish, oh God, no, it's no, oh, look at so-and-so's work, theirs is much better than mine. That might be true, but you've still got to be positive about your work, So looking at this piece here, I was so pleased with this. There were areas that I could develop, of course, but I came away from this piece feeling very positive, very confident about my skills in coloured pencil, but with a clear plan of where I wanted to move to next. If I was coming out of a piece going, oh God, I'm so rubbish, this is, it's just not worked, and look, these they don't even look like curls, they look like, I don't know, snakes or worms or spaghetti or, whatever. Oh God, honestly, I'm so rubbish. Now, how is that going to take me on to drawing my next piece? How is that going to spur me on and go, right, well, actually, I'm really pleased with how this piece has come out. My tonal values I'm so happy with. I'm actually really happy with these shapes. They've worked really, really well. Beautiful eye and everything. What can I do next? How can I develop? I'd really like to make my fur look a little bit softer. I'd like to make it look a little bit more like real fur. Ooh, how can I do that? And then I come away from a piece being really positive, and I have a plan. Okay, my plan is, how can I make my fur look more realistic? So my next piece that I draw, I'm remembering what I did with the previous piece, with this piece. I'm remembering that, yeah, I got my tonal values in there. Fantastic. I've got that crack now. Brilliant. I'll carry on doing that. How did I need to just change how I'm drawing my fur slightly so that I'm getting it more realistic. I'm going to have a look at my reference photo. Because I've been drawing for a couple of years now, I'm going to be going, I'm seeing a lot more than what I was seeing before. Ooh, actually, I'm seeing a lot more layering in there. I'm seeing a lot more different fur types. I'm seeing all of those. I'm seeing all of those little fur hairy bits going over the top. I wonder what would happen if I just put those little hairy bits over the top. And hey presto, my next drawing of a spaniel, I don't know, a month later, is going to be even better than this one. And it's going to keep on developing and keep on developing and keep on developing until, 2 years down the line, I've got something that I'm really happy with. There's still development to go in there. There's still things I want to improve, but I'm really happy with this. Now, if I didn't have that positive plan right from the beginning, when we had the picture of the horse that I first did, if I didn't have that positivity then, and that real eagerness to improve, and the plan, how am I going to improve? What am I going to do? Well, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do that. I would never have got to where I am now. And I'm not saying, that I'm the be all and end all, because I'm not. I want to be the best I can be. I'm always inspired by other artists. I mean, I open Instagram on a daily basis and sit there thinking, crikey, how have they done that? That is astronomically amazing. Do I get down about it? No. Do I get a bit jealous about it? Absolutely. But then I kind of swap that jealousy for, right, what can I do to better mine? And being really, really happy for the artist who is creating such phenomenal work. And that is one of the biggest things that I can give you as an artist to another artist. That's one of the biggest things, biggest tips I can give you. Love your work. Be proud of what you do. If somebody gives you a compliment, thank them. If somebody says your work looks like a photograph, say thank you. Be grateful that somebody thinks your work looks like a photograph. Don't go and be miserable and go, well, I want it to look real. I don't want it to look like a photograph. Somebody's giving you a compliment. Always try to be positive. If you can try and break the habit of that little voice in the back of your head telling you that you're rubbish. People talk about imposter syndrome. Okay. And I think imposter syndrome is kind of a made up phrase, made up couple of words. I think every single person has those feelings of whatever imposter syndrome is supposed to be. Imposter syndrome is supposed to be where you've done something but you don't believe that you should have been able to do it, or you don't believe that you were good enough to do it, and you feel that you're not worthy to be in the situation that you are. You're kind of an imposter in that situation. Well, I honestly think that is just a human feeling. I think it's just something that we all feel from time to time. I think if you give yourself a label, you are highly likely to become more of what you are labeling yourself. So if you start to label yourself as a confident artist who is developing their skills and who is getting better and better by the day because you're putting all of the work in, you're really making a plan on your development, you're really deciding how you're going to change things, and you are actually making those changes as you are drawing, then you are going to be developing at a rate of knots. Forget about the imposter syndrome thing. It happens to all of us. We all have those feelings of self-doubt. But if you dwell on those feelings of self-doubt, then those are the things that's what you're going to become. You are going to become somebody who doesn't have the confidence, doesn't have the ability to be able to create a plan to develop your work. So change up those negative feelings, the little voice in the back of your head telling you that you can't do something, that you're rubbish, that, what makes you think you can do this. Change that negative voice for a positive one. And it takes hard work, but every single time you hear that little negative voice in your head saying that you can't do this, that you're not able to do this, out loud, come up with 3 positive things about what you're doing, 3 positive things about what an amazing job you're doing, what a fantastic artist you are, and how brilliant you're going to be doing. And you will change those habits very, very quickly. If you can positively say things out loud on a regular basis, you will then start to become what you say you are. And I find that's a really, really powerful thing to be able to work on your confidence. So to recap, tonal values. Number 1, they are absolutely king. Make sure your darks are dark, your lights are light, and your midtones are midtones. But those darks need to be really, really dark. If you're drawing animals, really look at the fur quality, really look at the direction the fur is growing in, really look at the length of the fur, really look at how the fur is changing direction, really look at how the fur is growing over the top of the skull of whatever animal it is that you're drawing. Details, bring them in at the end. Even if you're working on smooth paper, on drafting film, on Bristol Smooth, whatever, you can build in your tonal details, your colours, all of that, and then incorporate your details at the end. What usually happens is your details start to kind of float in as you're building your tonal values in there. And self-belief, really, really work on your self-belief. Believe that you're going to do a good job. It will all start to come together and your work will start to develop really, really nicely.